Our speaker tonight is Dr. Bob and Joe Branin. They, a couple of years ago, they found a Irvingtonian site while diving in a pretty murky river, and they've become kind of celebrities. And I know you don't see them on Dancing with the Stars or anything like that, but if you do follow some of the science journals and museum pages around the country and even the world, you'll see articles about Joe and Dr. Bob. The University of Florida just released another secondary article from another article. They had one earlier in the year, just on all the great things that happened with the museum this year, and they were listed as one of the top things that the museum, University of Florida, found, or claiming they found now in their article. So they didn't put it up there. I'm joking. If you're new, you don't know these two, you will get to know them well. I don't have to tell you much about Dr. Bob and Joe otherwise, and the rest of the folks. So I'm just going to have them come up, and they're going to do it together. So I don't know if you heard me say I want to give Joe the microphone, and hopefully they'll be able to hear him over you. And coming up, Dr. Bob Sinibaldi and Joe Branin.
All right, so an Equus dominated Middle Pleistocene Irvingtonian site. We'll explain all those terms, but Equus is the technical term, genus term for horse. And so today's horse, Equus calibus, same as the Ice Age horse for the most part. As you start going back in time, and we'll explain what the Irvingtonian and why this site was so important. Let me see if I get the right button. So from a humble beginning. So this is my woodshed at my house up in Steinhatchee, right on the river. And there is rapids in the river there, and you can't take a motorboat up and down the river unless the river's really high. And I was just finishing putting the roof on this, and I hear a boat going by. Put. I'm like, wait a minute, how can a boat? So I walk up to the bank to see what's going, and it's Joe putting up river on some boat that he's modified with a big long shank on it that has like a mud flats boat or whatever. So I yell out, and he pops his head up, he circles around, ties up to my dock, and
he runs down the dock with a chainsaw.
Yeah. What are you doing? What are you doing? Hunt my river.
My property.
So I asked, like, what? So I said, so what are you doing? He goes, well, I stay down somewhere downtown in Steinhatchee, which is 3 or 4 miles downriver at the whatever. And I'm like, I have a whole house here. What are you doing? So so then we made some plans to dive together, and on June 3rd of that year, we went downriver from my house, and I found a nice little baby mastodon tooth, and that is a complete, well, not a complete set, but it's a set of Equus teeth that are all associated. I had found this tooth, and not too much else on that trip, and I was out of air already, and Joe has these great big huge steel tanks that he can dive like 4 hours per tank or some crap. Anyway, so I'm messing around by the side of the river, and the river was fairly low, and here's a pocket in the lime rock, and the one real dark tooth is just sitting on top of it, and I fan through this little thing, and it's a whole set of horse teeth. So I was like, okay, that's pretty good. And then Joe...
I went upriver a couple 100 yards, and he said he would bring the boat up. So I finished my tank, and I start floating back, and he's face down in the water, and I think, oh, no.
Yeah, it was, yeah, you had whatever.
I saw the snorkel, and I figured everything's going to be
So these were Joe's finds from that trip.
I didn't do quite so well.
And you know, I do think, I can't remember if it's this trip, and there's actually a trip skipped in between this, which I totally forgot that we did, where Joe found one of those pointy rocks that you're not allowed to pick up. But anyway, so that's the front porch from my thing that faces the river, and Joe brought his boat up, and we decided to make a plan of attack to systematically
that's my death trap canoe after years of hearing the Searles talk about how much they love the Coleman plastic hull flatback canoes. I decided to buy one, but instead of putting a regular boat motor on it, I had the genius, very cheap idea of getting a Harbor Freight motor and a long pole with a prop on the end that it can sometimes be pretty fun to drive. But
So anyway, so we made some plans, and actually the first, I had to really think about it, so I journal everything. The first 2 trips we made 2 trips downriver, then we went way upriver. You remember that trip? And we went way upriver to where, it shouldn't even be called a river. I don't know what's smaller than a creek, but it was smaller than a creek up there. I mean, it got to the point where we were dragging the canoe over stuff, and then finally we looked over and there was a horse tooth sitting, I mean, just a killer one sitting right on the bank. Like, we'll just stop here, and then like an hour and a half later, we had a horse tooth that was sitting on the bank of the river there.
And we got an infection from the septic systems that were walking.
Yeah, way upriver there.
Big
There's I like the next day I go like, what the hell? And I knew right away what it was because I had gotten one, I don't know, 30 years earlier, and the first thing the doctor said when I came, he said, man, I got this in, and I said, I was diving. He goes, were you swimming in Mexican waters? It's literally what the guy said. He's like, no, that one was on, I can't remember, on the Hillsborough River, one of those when it was low and you weren't supposed to go in there. Anyway, so finally, about the fourth trip maybe we made, we were looking for, it's a pretty unassuming location, but since I lived there, I'd go up and down the river in my kayak, and when it's low, I knew there was a bone bed there, and I had kind of messed around with it, but it was a lot of just broken stuff. And but there should be fossils there. That was our mentality on this.
Well, it was so low that you could see it was really low because of a drought, and it also was a king tide, so the tide went way up and the tide went way down. And we went out where you could see a clay layer exposed on the bank that's normally covered up by water.
Yeah.
So that kind of tipped us off that this would be a good area to dive.
Yeah, so we tried diving there, and initially I had already finished my first tank, and I had like a little piece of sloth tooth, and I forget what the other thing was. Joe was still on his first tank, so I switched out tanks. I was on my second tank, and when you're diving with someone else, you can't see when the river's not that good. So you pop up, you look for their bubbles, or possibly they're sticking their head up at the same time to figure out where they're at. And so as I worked my way upriver, I popped my head up halfway through the second tank, and I was planning on 3 tanks per day. Joe's standing on the bank, and I'm thinking, oh man, I haven't found crap. I hope he hasn't found crap either, because we'll move then. So I come up, and I'm like, I'm literally laying in the water. He's on the bank, and I'm like, you find anything? No, not much or whatever. And we were literally like, yeah, do you want to move? Yeah, I think we should move. And I want to say you had already moved the canoe up a little bit.
No, I set my tanks down to go walk back and grab the canoe, because you crawl 100 plus yards underwater without realizing how far you've gone. Then you pop up and you go, where's the boat? So you usually walk to the bank, unload your gear, and then hike back through the woods to where you left the canoe. This time I put the tank down, and right there on the bank, on this clay layer that's usually covered up by water, all these horse teeth were trickling down.
So when we were thinking, should we move to a better place, at first there was only scraps, and then I'm still laying in the water, and Joe goes, wait a minute, here's a horse tooth. Wait a minute, there's another one. Here's another one. Here's another one. And I mean, it was like boom, 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 boom. And I'm like, wait a minute. So I just literally slide right back into the water. I start hunting in the water, and Joe's working on top. And let's see if the next slide, so, and right next to the horse teeth, within reason, I mean, literally, there's not that much land exposed, because then it goes up and it's like grass or whatever. So it was like a little area that was exposed. Joe finds this tapir skull, and
it says work above water. I wasn't bank digging because the water was tidal, so it was coming up as that was.
And this stuff is laying on the surface. Nobody was digging in the bank. It was, you could see it, and all of a sudden, like, wow, this is unbelievable. So we're going to talk a little bit more about that skull later on in the presentation. And so as I slide down into the water,
tell them about the aluminum foil. We weren't.
So we're not prepared for this. So at this point in time, Joe, this skull he realized, oh my God, I've got a skull here. I can't just pop it out. It's going to fall apart. It wasn't in the greatest of condition you can see. And even the teeth that are missing, he just didn't glue them arbitrarily back on. So he's got the complete dentition. We're not prepared to jacket anything, this or that. So we don't have any aluminum foil, nothing. He goes, you got any aluminum foil at your house? I'm like, yeah. So now it's already starting to get a little bit late. We've dove some. He's found these things. So
the tide is coming in.
The tide's coming in. So Joe, with his boat, takes me all the way back to the house, and it's over a mile, and drops me off. I give him my wife's thing of aluminum foil from the house. It's supposed to be there for the turkey and Thanksgiving, but anyway, so he has to go back upriver and get this in the aluminum foil. Meanwhile, I stay home and make dinner. But in that interim, before he did that, there was a lot of stuff on the bank, and you must have geared back up and also went back in the water, because we found the alligator, or was that the second day on that trip? Second day on that trip. So anyway, when I slid back in right off the bat, I mean a killer horse hoof, and I probably have, in 35 years, 5 or 6 of this piece right here broken off. It's really hard. All that part of the hoof almost never, in the rivers, it doesn't last. It just tumbles, it breaks up. It's really hard to find an absolutely perfect, pristine horse tooth. I also found one side of a set of those horse teeth that you see over there, and then as the tide started coming in, not only did the river go up, which he was trying to be, all of a sudden, all that stuff we had fanned out, all that gunk was coming back. So as bad as visibility went to 0. So, but we plan on doing 3 tanks the next day, and I found the other half of that, and then the symphysis is that little front part of the lower jaw, which we'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute too.
It was really cool to see a lot of the horse teeth. When you had a little window of visibility in the silt, you could see the teeth just laid in the clay all in a row, with the bone dissolved away from it. Or in some cases, the bone would be there, but it'd be smashed, kind of like a tapir
little
skull
chunks
was. And you try to pick up all the little pieces, but mostly we were just kind of feeling for the teeth and then hoping to get the majority of the bone that was associated with them.
So if you look at, this was like, so these are pieces of the Equus, the cannon bones, that went together, one boom boom made 2 complete panels. There was tons of other pieces of cannon bone.
Big tibia on the bottom.
Yep, so these are all horse teeth all through here. A lot of other most of it's all horse bones. I think it's the other one where I have, these are 2 patellas, which are kneecaps. I don't know what Joe's got over there. Joe had a bunch of stuff, but you'll see another slide where he found that an alligator jaw and stuff.
Wrapped up in a bag, I'm not sure what, but.
Yeah, so it was an unbelievably killer sight. I mean, this would be considered a good, at that point in time, we're just thinking, man, we're having a good dive. And we weren't thinking like super special, like newsworthy. We're like, okay, this is really cool. And we're finding some good stuff. And so that's a first trip. That was another view of that lower thing. This is the second day on that first trip. Joe hits into a crack, and he gets a gator jaw on that. Did you ever assemble the other part of it together?
The skull? No.
No, the jaw. Oh, is it the skull?
The larger teeth are from the maxilla.
Okay.
It was pretty much the entire left side of an alligator skull somehow was wedged in that crack.
Yeah, and so
it was really fun to be reaching into the clay and then pulling out all these big, giant, rooted alligator teeth and looking at them with a dive light like this, and then throwing them in your bag, because you only have a little tiny bit of visibility when you're stirring up all that silt.
Yeah. So it was. So those were some really killer finds on that first trip. Trip 2 fun. So then we planned on going back again, and we went back. I don't know, it was 2 or 3 weeks later, and same thing, tons of stuff. And by this time, we were prepared. We actually bought our own aluminum foil and replaced my wife's or whatever. But we didn't. I don't know that we found anything else on top that had to be foiled again. But we both dove it, and there was a ton of stuff in the river. Again, you can just see the piles of stuff. I'm trying to look at what exactly. These are cannon bones here again, parts of a radius. That's the end of a humerus. And in some of this stuff, eventually, there's tons of horse teeth up in here. Some of these things actually end up going together. You just had to take your time and figure out what went with what.
And they all had really clean breaks too, so nothing had been river tumbled or eroded or nothing.
So trip 3 to the site, we brought all our dive stuff, but in between, after trip 2, September rolled around. Holbert was doing the presentation here, and I showed him that symphysis, and he immediately looked at it and said, "This is very interesting. This is important." And we're like going, "Okay."
There goes all their stuff.
Yeah, there goes all the stuff. They're going to want everything. So that was that. And he asked us to make another trip to the site and collect. The trip 3 site was to collect sediments. he wanted site measurements, we'll talk about it in a minute, depth measurements, and site pictures, which was just, I mean, you could take a picture of any bank on the Steinhatchee, and it's the Steinhatchee River, and the same thing in most part of the Peace River. I mean, sort of like, okay, here's a picture of what it looks like, you know, whatever, because he had already put together a presentation to do at Maps or somewhere, or the vertebrate one, whatever he was going to do. He immediately recognized that that horse stuff was not what it was supposed to be. The site measurement stuff, so you've got 50 or 60 feet of bank, which you're not going to run a tape measure on, and you have to run out the water and that. So we just brought a whole bunch of string, and Joe held the string one end, I held the other end, and we tied a knot there. Okay, we'll measure that when we get back. Then we got out in the thing, and boom, then we measured down.
Tossed the lid weight over, and
Yeah, we plumbed it like the old time, and then the sediment samples, he had given us 2 or 3, I guess, sediment bags. We took some up near the top where the gravelish stuff was, some midway, and some all the way. I think I got elected to do the bottom. And then when we dove on that third trip, we pretty much cleaned it out for the way we worked it on those first 2 trips. So I found maybe 7 or 8 pieces, and Joe immediately went farther upriver to see if he could find another site or whatever. So the third trip was really mostly to get information for UF so they could write a paper on the site. There was more than just horse material there. So this is a canini form of a sloth. So they have molar forms, canini forms. They don't call them canines or molars or whatever with the indentates. So bicentennial quarter. Does anyone know how old that is? 50 years. It's 50 years. This is the semi-quincentennial. That's what this is right now this year. It means half of a 500 years, whatever. And that's actually pictures from the journal article where they had, those are all things we found, and in somewhere in the article he would say what it was and this and that. And
E and F are both paramylodon teeth, and F is actually a really, really rare position to find because you see how it looks like a Z. They almost always break right in the middle of that Z. So that shows you how good of a preservational environment that clay was.
Yeah. So eventually we'll get to the paper. We'll keep moving forward here. Camel or llama material, cannon bone, toe.
Obligatory camel toe in the journal.
Yeah. So, and teeth. A giant armadillo, which is going to become important, just like we'll talk about his tapir in a minute. So the giant armadillo pieces we found here, an ulna, a couple radiuses, some scoots, and there was actually some of the little dasypus, the smaller armadillo. But horses rule the site. So we talked about how rare these hooves were, but they were whole feet. Toe, you know, the thing that everyone thinks that's a leg bone, but that's actually a metapodial. So that would be like a first, second, third toe, and then a hoof. That's what the horses. And there were just tons of toes, toe bones, ankle bones, which are astragalus, calcaneums, which are heel bones. Unlike the hooves, they're super, super dense because what happens in today's racehorses? The minute they twist their ankle or break any of those things, because you've got a horse that's running, those bones have to be super dense that can withstand the pounding, as opposed to the hooves. So complete sets of horse teeth. And this is an old picture because I did find the 6, it's missing one of the incisors. I did find the other incisor that went with that one.
We got a lot of grief from Holbert for not finding the accessory carpal bones that go on the the distal end of the cannon bone. They have a whole bunch of small, like rectangular sized bones that fit between the tibia and these cannon bones.
Yeah.
And we found maybe 2 of them, but
Right.
You're looking for something that's a pebble.
Yeah, they're like sesamoids and stuff. They're like they're located inside of tendons or inside of ligaments. There's actually bones. We have them in our body too. And it's like, where are those? I'm like, well, I don't know. There's no freaking visibility. Why you come dive it? So anyway, I mean, if you know, and Holbert's going to be doing a presentation here 2 or 3 months from now, whatever. He's a great guy, super pro amateur guy. Just very straight. This is the way it is. This is what should have been done. You should have informed us immediately when you found the site. We didn't know the first 2 times we dove it. We just thought we were really lucky bastards, you know, come on. Well, what the heck, you know, we didn't know it was scientifically relevant. So these are some of Joe's Equus finds. The last picture were mine. So I mean, we had like whole sets of horse teeth. That's one set, that's the occlusal surface, the chewing surface, those go that. And this is one that had bone with it, another whole set.
I don't know why they didn't include some of these in these pictures, but the maxilla and the lower teeth of some of these have really cool pathologies. And asking Hulbert about them, they're like a zigzag mark in the tooth, and it's from as the horses are galloping in the herd, the juvenile horses, the colts, get kicked in the face, and it deforms their teeth permanently, some of them. So a lot of the associated sets of horse teeth had an S shape to a few of the teeth.
And these were pictures out of the journal. If they don't do it, the journal was much better because it's really crisp. I mean, you can get it online, you can pull it up online and really see how killer. You can see the enamel, the color, there's still white in the enamel or like an off-white. I mean, these things were really, really killer well preserved. We're still thinking late Pleistocene, you know, 15,000, 10,000, 20,000 years old. Not so. So I think that's actually the same picture I had before that. So this was one of the synthesis that Joe found, and you can see the one I found is much nicer, but it's not a competition according to Rob, so whatever. Anyway, but this is what I showed Hulbert, and what was really unique is that, and this one's missing the end thing, it's broken off here. See these protocones, these are cones that they're in the middle of the tooth and they're hollow. These ones are not sealed off, and this is a male, so it's got the 2 male canine teeth. The female horses don't have canines. But as soon as Hulbert looked at it, he immediately knew by the formation and the fact that these are not sealed either. He knew that this was not a late Pleistocene. This was going to be probably Irvingtonian middle Pleistocene, which pushes it back. Instead of 15,000 years, it is 500 to 700,000 year old site. That's a huge difference in time. So 557 fossils make the trip to UF, but the paper says 552, so I'm presuming that 5 of the things that we sent up, they just didn't identify, and I don't know what they did, but
They were the nice ones.
yeah, out of here, whatever. Or they were really nice, yeah, they went, whoop. No, I don't know about that. So we made a trip up there for, once they came out, they waited, they did the study. Hulbert was the primary author. Rachel Narduzzi, who's now the collections manager, was another author. She did the indentates. They gave Joe and I a byline. We got to look at it and say, yep, looks good to us. Although
I caught a funny.
he caught the greatest error ever because on the abstract, I guess AI decided to correct Dr. Hulbert's abstract, and what did they do with it?
They changed the tapir had primitive traits to the tapir had primate traits. So I emailed Dr. Hulbert, oh, maybe this goes
This
over
is
my
getting ready
head,
to go into the journal.
but maybe this goes over my head, but do tapir have primate traits or primitive traits?
Yeah,
And
so
he goes,
he was really thankful that one got caught. So the paper comes out, and then
before that, he had us bring all the stuff to your house.
oh yeah,
and
we
individually wrapped for hours.
557 fossils in toilet paper.
Yeah, you've had that happen.
Yeah, I mean it was like hours and hours. So Joe brought his stuff to my house. We didn't go to 2 sites, and we did everything at my kitchen table.
100 three-toed horse teeth, because Hulbert is the expert on three-toed horses, and I thought we would get a brief description of the differences in the general species and how to tell them apart. He individually ID'd every single one.
Yeah,
And
so
I think that was a little bit annoying.
he's a major expert on Equus and on horse and all horses, you know, from all the way back into the 3-toeds too. So paper comes out. They invite us to come up. They're going to do a press release. So they invite us up there. So Joe and I are up. This is all the stuff that we found. Not all. This is some of the stuff that we found. In the white boxes of stuff that we found. In these older boxes were other items they pulled out for comparative to see, okay, how does it compare to other horses that might be Irvingtonian and or other sloths or the tapir and everything else. So we like to say we found all this other stuff too, but we didn't. So anyway,
What is that, an 8-foot mammoth tusk on the bench behind you?
Yeah, so we found all that stuff.
Yeah, we got that.
It was a really good site. But so the paper comes out, and they give us a byline with everyone else, and so it was cool, and we could get copies of it for like $50 bazillion, but Barbara Fight had a connection, and she got Jonathan Block's permission or whatever, and since it came out through UF, they printed us up copies at cost from them, which was, it wasn't cheap, but it was way, way cheaper, because not only could you buy it from them, but you had to buy 50 copies at like $22 each or whatever it was. Like, okay, well, I don't have that many friends that I can hand out, you know, whatever. So anyway, so we did get copies of the paper. I got 2 enabled, they're bound. They're really nice, little cellophane thing on them. So it is a rare Middle Irvingtonian site. So what does that mean? What is the Middle Irvingtonian? The last time period before the present, we're currently in the Holocene. Some people are now going to want to call it the Anthropocene. In other words, they've actually split the Holocene up, and I do think that's going to hold. And that last little would be from the Industrial Revolution on, where man has so changed the world that it's just a whole different world. But using the standard stuff, the Holocene is the time period when directly before us the Ice Age is the Pleistocene. The Pleistocene period is divided into 3 smaller time periods: Rancho-Librarian, Irvingtonian, and Blancan. Early, middle, late. Each of those time periods are divided into 3 smaller periods: early, middle, and late, but we were thinking that one might not be in
Rancho-Librarian is only broken up into 2.
Yeah, so
that's because it's the shortest. It's only 240,000 years.
Yeah.
The other ones are almost a million years.
So you can imagine the Ice Age goes from like 2.4 million up to the Holocene, which is almost till today, 15,000 years ago or whatever. Divide that into 3, take the middle section, divide that in 3, take the middle section. Now you've got the Irvingtonian. So the Middle Irvingtonian, 500, 700,000 years ago, it's only represented by one other site in Florida with a larger number of fossils, nowhere near the number we have. It's also extremely rare elsewhere in North America. The Middle Irvingtonian, not just the Irvingtonian, the Middle Irvingtonian. It often contains transitional animal fossils not represented elsewhere. Joe and I each found an animal that might represent a new transitional fossil. Now remember, they're also talking about this horse that has been found previously, also as a transitional fossil. So there's really minimally three transitional fossils in there that they know for sure. I found an ankle bone to a giant armadillo and a couple other pieces. Joe found some toe bones off it, and I was like, so, you know, Homocena Sinibaldi and the whole, just flat face, just like, we don't name the fossil after one ankle bone. I mean, just like that, like, okay, I'm crushed. He has a whole skull of a tapir. No.
The tapir skull. He's like, no, we need more. We need more.
So we might end up going back there and working the clay a little better, because we didn't.
He said some people will name a specimen off of just one skull. I'm not gonna. So
yeah,
gotta find somebody else.
So we turned to Rachel and said, Rachel, will you name it? No, she's not. She didn't have finished her degree. Anyway, so this is a site map of Irvingtonian sites in Florida. You can see there's not that many of them, and 1, 2, and 3 is that middle, early, and late.
You can see Lysy is down there on 9.
Right. So this is Lysy.
Some of the South Florida shell pits, and the phosphate mines dug into Irvingtonian material. Plus, they have a few up around Gainesville where the museum can get to. There's going to be a cluster of sites around Gainesville because they don't want to travel too far. But that green one is the only one that's the same age as our site, the blue site, 16.
See, he hedged his bets, and they're calling ours a 2/3 because they're not totally sure. They'd have to do more study on it. So you can see in Florida, first of all, there's not many Irvingtonian sites, because if I was to put a Pleistocene site, you would have like the piece sort of every river would have 1 million sites on it or whatever, and aside from all the dig sites and stuff. So not a whole lot of Irvingtonian sites. So that was cool that this is that graphic was in the paper. So I was able to. So I'm going to let Joe talk about his taper, then I'll talk about my thing, and he'll tell you what they believe is different about this tapir skull than the other tapir skulls that have been found in Florida.
So supposedly the distance, the diastema length, which is the distance between the canine and the first premolar, is longer in this than in any other extinct tapir species. It's actually closest proportionally to the modern tapir that exists down in South America, which is pretty cool. Also, these are kind of grainy, but every single one of these tapir teeth, the back side of them, the labial side of them, the side that faces out, has a crenulum going all the way around them. So each of the teeth has this, you can kind of see it on this ridge that goes all the way around it. They called it a labial cingulum. And every single one of the teeth has that crenulation to it. And Holbert said he looked at 1,000 other tapir teeth. None from the Blancan have it, none from the Irvingtonian have it, none from the Rancho La Brea have it on every single tooth. Some of them have a small little bit of that ridge, but none of them have it to that degree on every single upper tooth. So I think that's enough.
So here's the issue with it. If we go back and we find another upper molar that doesn't belong to this guy, which since he's got a little dentition there, and it has those cingulums on it, that would mean those tapirs have it. This could be just an oddball guy who ended up with these cingulums on his teeth because he didn't brush them or something. I don't know. So that's why they don't name stuff after a singular item that's found. And he could have just had a long snout like Pinocchio. Oh, who knows what the problem was.
But the combination of that unique
Yeah.
feature and the distance not matching up with any other tapir species is pretty
So
compelling.
it's pretty compelling. All we need to do is find, especially if we could find one other upper molar, or I don't know what the odds of ever finding another whole skull, because it was a dominant Equus site. Tapir didn't dominate, armadillos didn't dominate, and there'll be a percentage thing coming up later, another slide. So my giant armadillo, this is, the dark one is mine. So this is a progression of armadillos. These are stragglers, so they're ankle bones. And you can see how rounded, and all of a sudden you have this pointy indentation. You can see that this is now getting larger, and there's other things, and he describes everything in the paper to such a level of minutia that your mind would spin.
Well, I think Rachel wrote those.
Right,
the
but I'm saying
tapir and the horse were written by
Yeah,
Holbert,
but I'm
and
saying
was
that's just the way they have to do a technical paper. It's
Yeah.
just that technical. You're just going, oh my God, whatever. So anyway, that's what's going on there. So again, I would have to find more giant armadillo stuff to confirm that this might be a new species. And you can see it fits right in the middle of the progression. So it should be a transitional species, and it could be a new species, but I'm not going to name it now. Joe found some toe bones with a couple claws. I think there's a picture coming up on there too. So more of this guy was found, but this was the diagnostic part. The rest of the claw that Joe found was pretty much similar to, they don't change that much, I guess.
So it was rather funny to read the paper that was published on this, and the horse and tapir are just compendious, huge, in-depth, just multiple paragraphs on the horses and the tapirs because they were probably written by Holbert. The armadillo stuff, while still very, very technical, was much more concise.
Yeah. and some of the other ones were even more concise because there was only a couple like the camel and this and that.
Yeah,
and
the
then
camel and the sloth stuff, neither of them are terribly interested in that, so they got like a footnote.
So these, even the Equus stuff, it's all associated stuff. So these things have been found at the same site. They're not articulated. So the difference between associated, so Joe found these, and you can kind of put them and go 1, 2, 3, and they were found close to each other. This one is from another foot on the other side of the animal. There's things missing in between my ankle bone and Joe's toes. but they're associated, they're from the same site, they're close. Articulated means you find these bones exactly in order as the animal died. So this is my new giant armadillo site on the river. And all these bones click together and make one perfect foot of this guy. Now,
You can really see the difference in the astragalloid here.
yep,
Because this one has this weird valley right in there, and yours doesn't. It has a really tiny valley.
Yeah.
And also that groove that goes up the middle of it, you can barely see it in that one. Meanwhile, this one has it going all the way out to here.
yep. And so when I was finding this animal, I was really hoping, because it was down in a clay site also, that it was going to be a match for that, and it would not be septum trianalis. However, when I brought it up to Florida, it doesn't match septum trianalis either, so it could be either a later one or a different one or another migration out of South America. But this was articulated. This was down in the clay like that, and attached to this was a, whoops, it's back foot, tibia fibula, which are fused in that animal right off of the hat. And then the femur, the backbone. So that's an articulated animal. That's really rare in the rivers. But so all the stuff we had, all those horses were just jumbled in there. There weren't any, so they were close to each other, and I could put a cannon bone with a first toe, second toe, and a hoof, and it looked really cool in a Riker mount. We don't really know. I went by color. These ones are really colored close to the same, but that doesn't really mean that those ones really, really went together like that.
Yeah, because this was your site might have been a filled-in burrow or something like that.
Sinkhole, whatever,
Sinkhole,
yeah.
Yeah. Our site was a collapsed sinkhole where the edges would have fallen in and these animals would have been jumbled together as they're trailing down the slopes of the sinkhole. I learned that from my friend Sam, who couldn't make it here, but should have just watched that.
So, the University of Florida issued a press release. It looked something like this. They took 50 million pictures of Joe and I, and Mike and Cena will tell you, they probably get Joe's pictures on the first shot, but me, it takes quite a few pictures to get me smiling or this or that. That happens when you grew up with teeth that were beyond crooked, when I grew up, because you were poor and didn't have any 4 braces or whatever. Anyway, so
I look happy to hold the taper. You look,
yeah, well, they pick your favorite fossil. Joe picks a skull. I'm picking up something you can hardly see. Okay, that's really cool. Anyway, so so they issued a press release, which was cool, and we figured, okay, fine, it gets released, and they send us a copy of it. This is really neat. But from that press release, because it's University of Florida and they're one of the big dogs, Andreas, my German buddy. Well, Dr. Bob, you realize that you've been covered in Germany? And he sends me a copy of whatever, I don't know, I can't speak German, but, and of course they use his freaking taper thing, but that's okay,
Big
whatever.
deal in Germany, big deal internationally.
Yeah, so big deal internationally. This was one of Popular Science, it's an American one. Thank God they chose the right fossils on that one, they used some of my stuff. But anyway, so again, Joe's thing, IFL, I think this is an American one. One of them is the British one.
That's the Discover Wildlife one, was BBC.
BBC picked up, and BBC had all kinds of stuff on theirs on whatever. And I had Rails, hey, you realize you're on BBC? And then people contacted me, and I'm sure Joe did too. And there were other ones that we didn't get screenshots of from other countries. So it made international news.
It even was written up by Vice, and I thought that's the lamest way for a Florida man to make it onto Vice.
Yeah.
Much more exciting.
And then there were several of them, which we didn't put here, that were done by some group that just use AI. And they're almost comical, the wording on it, because they never even spell checked them or checked. I can't remember what some of the errors were, but it was just it just blew your mind, okay. But yeah, so we were all over the place for a short while. But the biggest thing was that we were on the cover of the Chronicles. And there we are, right there. So on the cover of the Chronicles, they get the article and they read it printed Christmas. Mike and Cena were gone the one time I did the presentation here, and I talked about stuff, but they put all these different people on. Joe and Rob are on the cover of the Chronicles constantly. For the first 20 years, I've been in the club probably 35 years, I could never get on the cover of the Chronicles. Just couldn't get it. I actually wrote a song, the cover of the Rolling Stone, and changed the words to the cover of the Chronicles. they finally put me on the cover when they had the blood mobile here. I'm giving blood. I had to give blood. They put me on the cover of the Chronicles giving blood. That's what it took for me to get on the cover. Anyway, so that was the highlight. Better than international news. We made the Tampa Bay Chronicles. You know, on the cover of that. It doesn't get any better than that.
And I paid for the Jurassic Park logo. I fought for that.
Oh yeah.
I also like how on the tapir skull they have the genus Tapirus, but also Helicotapirus, and I think that's the modern South American tapir genus. So they really don't know what to call that thing.
Yeah. So.
It's in the parentheses down there. Helicotapirus.
Yeah, and it's unusual because this is not the typical label. Like when you go there in the boxes, it'll say Joe Branin or say Bob. So Holbert has them all typed up. Who found what? To us, it was just once we got done wrapping, it was like we just wrapped them. Like, just wrap anybody. So we don't care. Just gotta get out of here, you know. And then my wife let the dog out, and Mike had seen it. Had an experience with the dog. I don't know if Rob was there the other day, and we went to see the Springsteen movie thing, and our puppy, who's 4, is 120 pounds, and
He's a bear.
he's a bear, and he just came. Oh yeah, you guys. It's like, oh my god. Anyway, so we let him loose on Holbert, and like he was like, oh. So it was like, yeah. So, what was neat, I went up. So on the armadillo site, I went up there. They did a site visit to look at the armadillo site, which they didn't do at the Equus site. I don't know how they would ever get there. The armadillo site's a little more accessible. And then I went with them, and I'll do a presentation of that probably next year, maybe. I went to UF, and they were scanning the skulls and stuff, which was really neat to see how all that was done. And as I'm walking down in their things, there's this huge poster. Now, this is only half the poster, because I kept the half where it talked about us, and I just cropped the other half. We don't need to talk about other people's sites. But on the bottom is there, Mike had seen his, not Tremarcus, the Arctodus simus, the bear teeth that they found on the rainbow. So this is a whole thing trying to, the fossil permit program was under fire from outside sources, archaeologists, and the discovery of the Equus site became one of the foremost examples. Then they went back with Mike's site on there. They mentioned the armadillo site hadn't been found yet, but they're talking about, this is because amateurs are finding these sites. UF doesn't even have anybody that can dive for fossils. They might in the archaeology thing or whatever, and the archaeology people do have people that will dive, and they're out of Tallahassee, and so they're kind of at war with each other. So archaeologists were trying to shut down the paleontology department in Florida. I mean, just basically what it would have done, at least their permitting program was really kind of goofy, you know, because if there's amateur archaeologists that are finding stuff and not doing the right thing with it, then police your own people. Don't come and try to police, because we have a good relationship with UF and the paleontology and the permitting program and stuff.
Well, they also were trying to say that all late Ice Age fossils could be artifacts because somebody could have killed them, which is just wildly unlikely.
Yeah.
But it was good that we had this site right around this time, because the age of it is so far back that if they try to claim that anyone butchered these animals, they'd be laughed out of the room.
And well, yeah, and, you know, so, and the other thing, if you have to notice that they chose the right fossil to put in. Much prettier than a busted up paper stone. Anyway, so why the site is important? Middle Pleistocene fauna is rare in Florida. It is a time period that is known to have several transitional species. We talked about that. 15 different vertebrate taxa are represented so far at the site, and 2 taxa found here might be new, the ones we talked about, his tapir and my giant armadillo. At least 9 MNI, minimum number of individuals, Ice Age horses were represented. We had about 28 cannon bones, either whole or partial. So we knew that there was at least 7 Ice Age horses, and we just took a guess, because every animal has 4 of those bones at the end of, or top of each foot. And then Holbert came back, and we had a whole bunch of inner ear bones, and they're very funky looking, but they're very easy to tell. The inner ear bones from this site were unbelievable. You could actually see that they were still in part of the skull. You could see the fossilized eardrum. I mean, everything. They're so unbelievable.
The eustachian tube kind of looking.
Yeah, the two, everything. Super cool. Really cool. And we had, like, I don't know, say we had 15 of them. Well, we're thinking, okay, 8 and 8, so 16, or probably the 8 Ice Age horses. There were 9 left Ice Age horses, 9 left inner ear bones. It's the first known site to produce an associated upper, lower, and incisor teeth from that transitional horse in the middle of the Irvingtonian. So it wasn't like people have found that those, he recognized those on my little jaw thing, those 2 end little incisors right away. He knew they were from the Irvingtonian. This is time. Here's that whole thing still in the symphysis, and here's the 2 rows of teeth that go with it. And it was actually
with the upper teeth as well.
Yeah,
that
there
was
was
what got him really excited.
Yeah, 4 or 5 uppers on mine, but Joe had some where he had the whole rows of uppers with a whole row of lowers. So there were whole sets of teeth where they can really tell what's going on.
They found these specific. This type of Equus was described off of Lycie material, but they never had an upper skull directly associated with the lower jaws of this variety of horse, because Lycie is a river site kind of, so all that stuff was jumbled and pushed around and moved around. But from this site you could directly see these upper and these lower teeth came out wedged together like
Yeah.
they were,
And when you
and never moved.
when you found like one set of teeth and you found the other ones, if they were close by, they are mirror images of each other. Like the one where it has a picture of all my horse teeth with that front. You can literally sit them, and when you found either uppers or lowers, and even if they were a little bit spread apart, they would just sit perfectly right next to each other with 0 space. So Equus is an animal, explained in this book here, we'll talk about that later, an animal where their teeth are so perfectly tight together that no food can get in between them. And the last 2 teeth are curved to make sure that they push the other 4 teeth in the lower or upper jaws together, so no space, no food's getting in. And there are no cavities, so they have evolved to be that. 75% of the 552 identified fossils, over 400 of them were Equus. So you can see it was an Equus-dominated site. Now we don't know why. They believe this is also a sinkhole that collapsed in, that these animals somehow fell in the sinkhole. Unlike my armadillo site where everything's juvenile, this site had young, old, whatever. And what happens with these prehistoric sinkholes sometimes, 500 to 700,000 years ago. Steinhatchee River was nowhere near that place. It probably didn't even exist. But it slowly carved over till it hit the edge of the sinkhole, maybe washed out all that broken bone where we find all that jumbled stuff, till eventually we believe we're working the far end side. In other words, we're not the start of the sinkhole, we're probably working the end of what was left in that clay. And that's why the stuff was so well protected. It's the first Middle Irvingtonian site to be discovered in Florida in 80 years. So one other site that had a few fossils that were Middle Irvingtonian was 80 years ago. So this
and
is
these stay in Florida too. That site I think ended up at the Smithsonian.
Oh yeah, so a lot of those early ones, there were people coming down from Washington or Philadelphia and wherever, and or New York for the American Museum. We're almost at the end here. So more fun facts. The site is now formally known as Steinhatchee River 2A. So that's how they abbreviate it. The only thing the archaeologists get right is they name the site after the people that found them. Yeah, so they named the site after the people found them. The paleontology people don't do that. They divide the river up into sections, and then they divide those sections in, and these sections will not go. So we're in Steinhatchee River 2. 2A is here. 2B might end up over here, and then 2C might here. So the letters will go in the order that they're found. They're not going to go in alphabetical order up the river. So A, B, C, D, Z, whatever. Same thing with the other sections. And you can really they looked here, Steinhatchee River 4, that just goes on and on. So I guess he's figured, nobody's really turned anything from up there. So eventually they may divide that up if sites start being found up there. But right now, that goes for 3 times as long.
That's basically just a creek all the way up there.
Yeah, we went up there, and that's where we got diseased. Yeah. So the river was divided into 4 sections. This was the first site found in the section of the river. All these rivers that stuff has been turned in, no one's ever turned in a site at Steinhatchee's first site even studied at Steinhatchee, period. Fossils have been turned in from Steinhatchee. Somebody found this, they found that, whatever. This is the first site. And I'm presuming the armadillo site will be the second site.
And that marker for 2A is nowhere near where it actually is, because that picture was in the journal.
Yeah,
So
they
it was-
try to keep that a little bit.
They try to keep
They
that
do try to
on
keep it a little bit.
wraps.
We've joked about it, but yeah. So what's the fauna list? Obviously there were horses there. Giant armadillo, alligator turtle, land tortoise, which is the great big giant tortoise, deer, and mammoth. There was a fish. They don't know what species. The small armadillos, the dasypus. There were two types of sloths: a gray fox, the tapir, like Joe found, and an undetermined medium-sized carnivore. That's just a way to describe it. So it was a.
And what really,
I want to say radius or something. It was like a leg
yeah,
of
it
some
was a
kind.
tibia, I think.
Okay.
Yeah. What really nailed this down as Irvingtonian was we found no bison, and bison is really common in the rest of the Steinhatchee River.
Yep.
But in this site, there was 0 bison, and
Yeah.
bison is an index fossil for the Rancho La Bran. So when bison appear in North America, that's the marker point for the end of the Irvingtonian and the beginning of the Rancho La Bran. So we found none, not even a toe bone to bison.
Joe was going to bring a bison tooth and stick it in there so he could get all his fossils.
We
Oh,
should've put
sorry,
it-
you're
we
wrong.
should've put it in the sediment bags that we gave them, so they could find it themselves and think,
So-
oh, wow.
Herman Trapp, and a good friend of mine who did the artwork for this book, which we'll talk about in a second. That's his recreation of what the early horses might have looked like, almost zebrine in type of thing. His artwork's really, really good. Anyway, so yeah, it's this one here. So if you have any questions, you're going to ask Joe because he can answer mine. And look, here's how you know Joe's going to answer. You can see, here's me. I'm going like, I don't know what I got, and Joe's pointing out, oh, here's what this is all about. So.
I think they told us to do that.
And if you are disappointed with your Christmas gifts, these will make you feel better, okay? So there's the price. We'll leave that up there. I'm glad to sell anyone one and sign them and whatever. So people are ready to get out of here.
That was
Thank
a
you.
good question.
So now we're gonna have, show and tell, and I'll try to leave Rob and Joe for last. So, we'll start with Connor Cole.
So I know a lot of you back there probably won't see this. So what I have here is just a giant sloth tooth. It's about 2 inches, 2.5 inches long.
Pretty well worn. Yeah.
Just some flaking enamel on it, but
That from the Florida River.
yes.
That's all. You're next.
I don't know what I have.
You're gonna see here in a minute.
What do I have here? It should stand up there.
That's Separacodon.
Okay, it's the first time seeing it. What is,
Separacodon.
did you find this one?
I have no idea.
I think I did. I think this is the one that came out of that concrete hill that was ridiculously hard. And then I've been looking for this forever in our plaster jackets. So Soberacodon and the vertebrae from Titanic there. So that's a quite large one. So wow. Huh? From the Badlands of Nebraska, sorry. Wow, that is the one I was looking for. Finally.
Connor Barnes?
I'm not gonna walk around with this one, so. So, to kind of give you a little bit of backstory, I went out to the Badlands in Nebraska back in 2021, so it's been a very long time. I've had a bunch of casts and plaster jackets and stuff, and I have not had access to them for many, many years. So, on a whim, I decided to send one of my plaster jackets off to Rob, and I was hoping to find a jaw in there. I was told there was going to be a jaw. There was not a jaw, but there were some really cool tannin-filled teeth. And actually, a while back, I brought in an incisor to the same rhino. So, but I'll show you Let me get the better one here, hold on. So this is one of the molars, I believe, to the Titanotheria. What's really cool is this specific material, it's got this dark brown enamel color, and then the root is this nice orange. And the incisor that I have that goes with it has the exact same coloring, so very, very neat. And then I think that we still have some more of it that's more in storage that we have to get out. But I have another tooth here that's also just partially complete, but it's still kind of like in the matrix, which is really cool to like leave it that way. But thank you, Rob. But yeah, that's everything that I have, so thank you.
Yes, Joe, since you're up front. So you want to go before Rob. You wait and see. Yep.
Where do you want me to put it?
I'll make in back of my truck. Microphone.
Big old jaw.
The one tooth is loose. So this is a mastodon jaw. The only one I've found with the M3 and the M2 actually associated. Usually this tooth just floats off somewhere and you're left with just this one big one. So that was an exciting find. I have a towel to put under this, but what makes this one really cool is I also have that, which is the lower tusk. So those are really unusual to find just on their own, much less.
Were the teeth in the jaw when you found it, or you just find it?
No, I found this one, and then I looked a little bit more, found that one. Found that one, looked a little bit more, found that one, looked a little bit more, found the jaw in maybe a dozen pieces, put it all back together, filled in some cracks. It still needs some work around here. And then I went back to the same spot and found the lower tusks as well. But yeah, I got both of them. So the other half of the jaw, I have 2 or 3 chunks of it, but I don't really think the other 2 teeth are there. Somebody probably picked them up back in the 1960s or something, so. Paul?
It's gonna make a priority claim on it.
Joe put that together in record time. That was in a bunch of pieces just a few days ago.
Yeah, on Monday.
Wow.
Good job, Joe. He's ruins many of my days by sending me pictures of that stuff still wet in his boat. Make me wish I was get off my butt to a fossil hunting more. Rob Carlson.
Like Mike and Cena, I go out west twice a year, fossil hunt the Oligocene in Wyoming and Nebraska, and also the Cretaceous Pierre Shale in Wyoming. And I go with 2 or 3 other people. And on this past trip, we try to keep in communication with walkie-talkies for safety reasons and for helping each other reasons. And on this trip, Bonnie did not bring the walkie-talkie. So at the end of the day, he says, "I think I found a pig." And I said, "Oh, okay," which is pretty rare because they're large, and I think the only times pigs died was when they killed each other, and when they did, they ripped each other's heads apart. Because you find lots of pieces, but very rarely find whole ones. But technically, it's Archaeopterygium, they're technically, now they're saying not a pig, they're more closely related to hippopotamus. It's one of those, like oreodonts, where they probably don't have a living descendant necessarily. But I put off working on it for a while, and he kept calling me and nagging me, and because he's got a friend of his, George Phillips, from the museum in Mississippi, is coming to his house, and I think he wants to show it off. So I started working on it, and once I started working on it, it's like, Joe, when you find something fun, you just keep playing with it. It was done pretty quick. It was a lot more than what I anticipated that he had found. They were Irvingtonian animals. It's probably the best fossil he's ever found. He's kind of over the moon about it. I texted him pictures a couple days ago and asked him if I could bring it to the meeting, and it's the first he had seen it. And he's a Vietnam vet, and his family was able to arrange for him. He's going to next week lay the wreath at the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier. He goes, otherwise I'd be driving down to get it. But yeah, that was Bonnie's find for our September trip.
We'll raffle it off later, so.
He'll kill me. He'll come down from Atlanta and kill me. So the same trip in September, I said we do the Oligocene. We also do Cretaceous, the Pier Shale, which is back when the inland seaway. So everything is marine. Ammonites and things like that are common. The ranch we go to, there's no ammonites, no baculites. It's fish, and usually it's Siphaectinus, which were a huge, look like a giant tarpon with enormous teeth. But on this trip, I think I brought in the October meeting after I got home a couple of round vertebrae that I found. I was walking one of the slopes and I could see a couple of loose vertebrae coming out of the shale. And so I traced them up to where they were coming out and found where they connected, and a little further started to see some pieces of ribs. And then they went into a concretion. And normally the shale is incredibly crumbly. It's miserable to work with because it's inundated with selenite, which is gypsum that has sulfur in it, because it's an oil shale and it's got a high sulfur content. It's hard because this doesn't preserve the fossils well, and it's also just very crumbly. But anyway, as I further got in, the fossil itself is encased in sandstone. So it was the saving grace that it held everything together. So I've been working on it. Mike's been over and seen the business end of it. I took it out in a couple of sections. I'm bringing it, starting at the tail that I found, and I figure I'll work my way forward. This is back, everything I found I believe is from about hips forward. Luckily I got the front end and not the back end. Because luckily with reptiles, when you find the vertebrae, they're ball and socket. And so when I found it, I could tell by the direction of the ball and socket joints that I was heading to the head, not following the tail. But I've gotten this piece stabilized. I'm redoing matrix on it because the pure shale is ugly and it doesn't show the bone as well. But this is probably pelvis end starting to make its way forward, the vertebral column, and you can see at this top end, the ribs pointing up towards me. I have those ribs. They're about a foot long, and then if you see on this side, the ribs on this side of the body are all running parallel to the vertebral column. So they must have been folded underneath it when it died. But there's about 6 or 8 more vertebrae that go on the other end of this. This is the end going towards the head. But it's just a matter of getting it stable now, and then, like I say, cleaning off a little more matrix. Then I'm going to replace all of this snotty black matrix with more of the gray sandstone look, so that the bone shows better. But it's probably how the vertebrae would be in life with the process of sticking up. But you can see that the preservation isn't the greatest on the bone. They tend to get a little snotty and gnarly. But like I say, the sandstone was the saving grace because it preserved them better. But I've got the business end of it prepped further than this. But it's gonna be a little project. I'll probably have to get Joe come over and help me. Maybe I'll get that to the next meeting, because it weighs about 150, 160 pounds, but the skull is there. That's cool.
We've got quite a bit of new characters and some older ones to show you. First up, from the early Cretaceous of Great Britain, Eliza. Can you guess what kind of dinosaur she is?
Looks like.
You have to step off out of the spotlight there.
Well groomed.
You.
Is it a dromaeosaurid?
No.
Velociraptor.
No.
It's a duckweed, right?
Believe it or not, she's an early tyrannosaurid called Eotyrannus.
Oh.
Before tyrannosaurids got so big that they did at the end of the Cretaceous, many of them were much smaller during the Jurassic and early Cretaceous because the larger carnosaurs were already filling the big niches. So you could say that before they became tyrants themselves, these guys were terrorized by bigger carnosaurs. But of course, things soon changed afterwards. And what can you notice about Eotyrannus here on its body?
It's got feathers.
That's right, it has feathers. There is evidence that some early tyrannosaurs and even some later ones had feathers. That's because they're not carnosaurs like Allosaurus and Giganotosaurus, but rather Coelurosaurids, which means they're more closely related to birds than Allosaurus is. Coming from the late Cretaceous of China around 66 million years ago, this is Quintrell chianensisaurus. Can you say that name? Yeah, the Chinese have a way of making up some of the hardest to pronounce dinosaur names. For example, X is sh and Q is ch. So you pronounce it Chianensisaurus even though it starts with a Q. Chianensisaurus, along with another tyrannosaur from Mongolia known as Alioramus, are unique because their snouts are much thinner than other tyrannosaurs, which means that they were hunting different types of prey than the larger ones. Here in dinosaur fossils in North America are known mostly from the west, but this one is from the east. Alana appalachiasaurus, first found in the late Cretaceous of Alabama, with some remains found in the Carolinas and in Georgia. This would have terrorized the eastern half of the United States during the late Cretaceous, hunting down hadrosaurs and ornithomimids. And rounding out the tyrannosaurs that we have is Norine nanotyrannus. Yes, that genus is back. Get used to it. Nanotyrannus has long since been confused for a juvenile Tyrannosaurus. But now, thanks to some new research, we can confidently say it's its own unique genus now. So our character Terrell has his own cousin living in Hell Creek next to him. Not that he's ever pleased about it. Now, can you guess what this dinosaur is?
Ceratosaurus.
Yes, Coraceratosaurus from the Morrison Formation, one of the rarer theropods. There. And which one is this?
Ankylosaurus.
Yeah, Kyle Ankylosaurus, one of the few dinosaurs that T-Rex would choose to avoid. I mean, would you want to break any of your teeth on that? Whether you break your teeth on it or he'll break them for you, along with your arm, your leg, your ribs, etc. He and my Triceratops character Thrice are good friends, even though they butt heads a lot. Now, can you guess this one?
Prosaurolophus?
No.
Is that an Edmontosaurus?
Yes. Edward Edmontosaurus, the regalis species found in Canada. From Edmonton and proud of it.
Now it's a tar field?
Yeah, it's a tar field now. Now, what is this?
Jurassic Park.
I mean the genus, not the movie.
But that's, I saw, the last time I saw one was in Jurassic Park like that.
Yeah.
What is it?
Herpetosaurus?
Tannin-filled, otherwise known as the prey that Deinonychus liked to eat. Tina Tannin-filled. She's very sensitive about her tail, so don't bring that up. Guess what this is?
Oviraptor.
Close.
Gigantoraptor.
Yes. Genghis Gigantoraptor, our Oviraptor character, Aki's cousin. And in spite of his name, he's actually quite a nice guy. But watch out for his powerful kick, though. You want to guess how big Gigantoraptor is?
Gigantic.
Yeah, gigantic. But it can reach anywhere from 26 to around 28 feet in length. So imagine a cassowary that big. Would you want to make that mad? One of the speedsters of the Cretaceous, Axel and Ceramimus. Now, Gallimimus means chicken mimic, and Struthiomimus means ostrich mimic. What do you think Ceramimus means? It means goose mimic.
And this is Gabby Gallimimus with an I in the name.
Gabby Gallimimus, one of the dinosaurs seen in Jurassic Park, but this time with feathers. Interestingly, though, Gallimimus didn't originally feature in Michael Crichton's novel. The reason why they had it featured in the film was to show the audience the similarities between birds and dinosaurs.
Near his stride are Struthiomimus.
The ostrich mimic himself. Now, how do you think ornithomimids like these would have behaved? You know,
Like ostriches?
yeah, like ostriches or emus.
I was gonna say chickens, maybe.
You know, can you imagine what it would be like to ride on one of them? It's estimated that they could probably run as fast as ostriches, around 35 to 40 miles per hour. And yes, people have been known to ride on those birds. I was thinking of trying to take it up myself sometime.
But I suggest it's not recommended, seeing how temperamental they can be.
Yeah.